as we were discussing at the moment, we don't have a quorum, but we'll go forward on the agenda with information items, which puts us to item number 2, the quarterly report. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll control it one line.
This one.
Do this one and that one.
So this when you see the right analysis.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm going to very quickly go through the normal quarterly productivity report. There's not really much new in terms of which routes are kind of performing very well versus which have room for improvement. We'll start with BRT. The ridership is up quarter over quarter, year over year. We are seeing productivity in terms of passengers per trip that's increasing. Cost per passenger is going down. Those are trends that we like to see. So BRT continues to kind of come back, but it's not quite at pre-pandemic levels in terms of ridership at least. When we look at our arterial routes, our strong performers continue to perform very well. The only thing that we're kind of really have highlighted in terms of we want to watch it is the 14. But, we do see generally positive trends in ridership and generally negative trends, which are a good thing in terms of cost per passenger. Looking at the community behavioral routes, which are designed to connect neighborhoods kind of to the arterial service, we see sort of the usual suspects on this. 76, we've known that there's some room for improvement on that route. That's definitely a high priority for us to look at through the transit strategic plan that we've just kicked off. So we'll be doing that analysis this spring and summer, and of course working with stakeholders to kind of get input on what should be included in terms of all the alternatives considered. But we think the 76 is ripe for improvement through that process. And then our circulators and feeder routes. Again, there's nothing really new here. The 88, that one's always a little borderline. And the 93, that's also peak period only service, so not a lot of passengers per trip. We see costs that are getting better in terms of passengers per trip, but still not where we want to see them relative to their peers in this category. And then the express routes, 95 continues to be the one with the most room for improvement among this group. We continue to see strong growth in this category in terms of passengers, and correspondingly continue to see a decrease in cost per passenger in this routes. So that's positive to see. And then on the overall on-time performance for the quarter, that was at 69%. That is down a bit from last quarter. I think one thing we saw was with some scheduling changes, specifically the 77 and 78, we had some runtime issues, and we are addressing those in the May booking. So the on-time performance should bump back up for the next quarterly report. If there were no questions, I'd like to go into the, I thought I would go away.
Okay.
No, you go first.
So I guess for Adrian, for the 93, are we still looking to phase that out with the microtransit?
Yes, we actually just talked about that maybe yesterday. Internally, kind of related to the email that I sent you out there. We're trying to do the planning for that stuff now, and we are thinking about maybe doing a parallel phase out. So put it in to people get comfortable with it, but within the same schedule stage. So almost start the microtransit, if that's agreed upon, for that one in September, and then maybe in October we'll end up removing the 93. So that's still in the plan.
Okay, good, thank you.
So we heard the other day about some use of I-64 funding for transit stuff. I was wondering if we can, or if there's I don't know enough about it, but is there an opportunity to use interstate funding to help the 95 Express? Or to supplement the funding that is, going to run that service?
I know, so GRPT actually went and reduced the TDP and identified funds that basically were part of the ramps, that touched the 64. And they said those were the routes they saw were the short bus express, the 7s and the 19. And they submitted it as part of the I-64 for transit. So that's how those actually got submitted. It's almost been like 3 years since that happened. So they've just been sitting there because we can't expand or do anything about it. So as far as, I guess, that specific source, I don't think so. We can explore
I can ask.
other kind of opportunities for it. We've even asked, because like the express one for short pump, I mean, most likely it's not a route that's really in high demand right now. So we did ask if we could rescope that. I'm not sure about services for the 95. But.
Because 95 right now doesn't stop at Bright Point. There was a time when
I
they
heard
did.
about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know whether there's value in trying to put a stop back at Bright Point.
It actually used to be quite a lot, like people work there and runs down, and just like now, they, when trips on, I think it works.
Okay.
It was pretty well utilized.
Yeah, because
Could you look at the
run times?
TSP?
Yeah, we can look at it through the TSP.
See if there's, I mean, besides what, like, if there's any interest.
Yeah.
Was it used?
Yeah,
It was, okay. Yeah, see if there's any interest.
okay, thanks.
Okay, if there's no further questions on that. I'll move on to kind of a little more flavorful ridership analysis than what we normally do here. So starting off with the 29X, if you may recall, this was an express route. It serves between downtown and the park and ride lot at Maryland and Gaskins. It has some very high loads that we were seeing, especially through the summer and fall of last year. And at times it was kind of creeping up above the number of seats that we have available on our coach buses that we run on the express service. That's not really ideal for us, since this is traveling on the interstate. We want to make sure that everyone on the bus has a seat for that ride. Since we are still experiencing an operator shortage, we didn't want to add a trip to the route necessarily. First, we wanted to see if we could maybe shift the trip to try and get some shift of those passengers that were on the 405 westbound trip to shift to what was previously a 425 trip that we moved to leaving downtown at 415 instead, because there was adequate room on that trip to absorb a lot more riders. I'm just gonna come back to that one. So looking at kind of how that's been working out so far, I would say that the results are a little inconclusive. This shows our afternoon westbound trips. So going back out to Henrico on the 29X, you'll see the 405, we've still got some high average maximum loads there. On the 405 trip, looking at the 415 trip, initially we saw in January, there was only, I think, 1 day of service, and it had not that many people riding it. But then as we got into February, we saw ridership that was roughly on par with what the 425 trip had been generating. And then it kind of dropped a little bit. You'll see that dark blue bar for March of 2023. So I think this is one that we're going to continue to monitor and see if we need to shift something for September. But at the moment, it's a little inconclusive. But going back a slide, I know Commissioner you had mentioned wanting us to look at that ridership by weekday, see if there's any difference that maybe match some of the travel patterns you all are seeing. And it does look like ridership is generally lower on Thursdays and Fridays, especially Fridays. So that was a pattern we noticed. We can look internally and evaluate whether it makes sense to have more service on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That does get a little difficult scheduling wise, but not impossible. We could maybe have those as trippers or something, but we'll see.
It looks like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah, the heavy days, yeah. So we would have more service on those days. Sorry if I misspoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two questions when you get a chance.
Yeah.
So, sorry if I missed this, which of the trips, afternoon trips are you using a coach on?
The coach should be on all of the trips. I think it's 2 blocks that operate the 29X, if I recall. So the trips are going back and forth a couple of times, or each bus is going back and forth a couple of times between
Okay.
downtown and Gaskins.
But it's not on the are you using it on the 405 trip?
Yes, we try to put the coach on as many of the express trips.
That has more capacity than the regular?
It has more seating capacity, yes.
And follow-up question,
Mhm.
I used to know how many it had.
I want to say it's 52.
Sounds right. Those are older buses in your fleet. What's the remaining life on them, and are you gonna replace them with coaches? Or
Good question. We've been looking into that.
It's an issue with
NCI
manufacturer.
bids the coach and the CNG for the electric vehicles at the cost of $1 million. So, but we are looking at 2 other manufacturers, Ricos and Pajero Coaches. So we're waiting to hear back from them to see if they offer a CNG vehicle. But yeah, they are, we actually have 3 over there now that we see that they're useful life time-wise. It's eligible for replacement.
what, yeah, when did y'all get those? Do you remember? The bill?
At least 12, well, they're up, so at least 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
Those are for your 12 years, I think we have a couple more that's coming up. So currently we only have 3 circles right now.
So there's gonna be, they're in the 13 that are supposed to be replaced on this next cycle. But because of the manufacturer, we're holding off, we're not excluding electric considerations, but we're doing that study right now, so we're waiting for that to conclude.
Has the customer feedback of late been that they still prefer the coach for those trips, or they don't know?
I don't know that we've asked recently, or I can ask customer service if they've gotten any random comments on it.
Well, and the operators will normally let us know as well, because they're the ones that hear it from the customers, when we don't have a coach bus on it, so I didn't receive any feedback.
I know when y'all first put them in the service, especially with Gaskins, that was a fairly tight group of express riders, and they were unhappy that you replaced the standard bus with the express because they couldn't socialize as much as
With
they.
the high seats.
Yeah, with the high seats, you basically only talk to the people immediately around you, which I thought, y'all are just being ridiculous, but it makes sense. But then I think they either adjusted their trip to ride on the non-coach trip, or
So in your conversations, they preferred the non-coach?
some of them did. I mean, I don't know that we did a full survey of which bus do you want. We didn't, the options were limited.
You wanna do a quick survey?
You can.
Careful what you ask.
Right, right,
One question?
We can't guarantee that we'll always
Exactly.
have them out there, so we get feedback saying, oh yeah, we love the coach, we want the coach, and then the one time we put it down and we can't put it out there, then we get the point, so.
Well, Yeah, I was gonna ask it in a way that if we were to put the other ones, would there be, because if ends up that we wanted to have CNG and those manufacturers don't work, I mean, we technically could go after just getting normal 40-foot vehicles.
It's kind of where I was going with that, but the counter to that is, it's a fairly long trip and primarily interstate, so it seems like that would be a more comfortable ride and potentially safer if there's a crash. So. Food for thought.
So, moving on to the ones, as you remember, we made some pretty significant changes to the structure of the 1A, the 1B, and the 1C, in our January 29th booking. Instead of the 1 being Sundays only, and the 1 A, B, and C going all the way from Chamberlain and Wilmer to their southern end of lines, we split them at the downtown transfer plaza, and now the 1 provides 15-minute service between Chamberlain and Wilmer and downtown, and the A, B, and C provide 15-minute service between the transfer plaza and Southside Plaza. with 30-minute service from south side to their more south and western end of lines. So this was something we did primarily to help our on-time performance. These routes kind of have chronic issues or had chronic issues with on-time performance. So we wanted to look at, is this helping on-time performance? And also, what is the ridership doing in response to this change? Make sure that we haven't inadvertently alienated riders and lost ridership by making this change. So first we'll look at the ridership. These are just average weekday boardings, looking by time period and in total. We have seen an increase in ridership, especially in the afternoon peak and the PM late hours. So that's been a positive to see. And this is the ridership for all of the ones taken together. So because the one had previously only operated on Sundays, it'd be kind of a weird apples to apples comparison exercise if you were to break it out route by route. So this is thinking of them as a family of routes that provide service in this corridor. So we have seen an increase everywhere except the early morning, but that's a very low amount of ridership numerically. So I'm not too concerned about that at this point. I think it's good to see what we are seeing in terms of ridership growth.
But just to put out there that it's because now you could have a 1-seat ride, now you have to transfer.
It could be,
So
yes.
it still counts as ridership in terms of a unlinked passenger trip, but in actuality, it may not be unique.
And the origin destination survey that we are beginning at the end of this month will give us a little more insight into the amount of transfer activity that's happening on the route. And we can compare that to the previous origin destination survey in 2019, which was done on the old route structure for the ones, and kind of see, has that increased, has that decreased? Now it's a feel for what is actual real ridership growth versus what is a forced transfer growth. Looking at the on-time performance of the routes, again, this is all of them kind of taken together. We have seen growth in all time periods. That's been very positive. I'm especially pleased to see the growth or the improvements, sorry, I should say, in PM peak on-time performance. That was kind of where we were hurt the most. That's where traffic congestion is the worst. So seeing that increase of 7.6% was very, a difference of 7.6% was very positive for us. So we'll continue to monitor these things to see, does it continue to work out the way that we hope it will. I also anticipate that this should be getting even better. I should knock on wood, but with the one of the service adjustments we're making for May is to a runtime adjustment on the one, specifically making sure that some issues we were having with the runtime and the on-time performance with the one going southbound during the PM peak, just kind of continually not being able to meet its time points on time. This should help that, and so hopefully lift that PM peak a little higher even. And then, quickly wanting to take a broad look overall at where we are for the fiscal year to date. You'll see the purple line, which is doing better than the other lines. That's great. That is this fiscal year. This is just cumulative ridership to date, comparing it to both last year in the blue line, and the green line is FY19. That was our last full pre-COVID year. I think I also added in a trend line here. This is a pretty linear pattern, and it does look like we'll be exceeding both FY19 and FY22 ridership across our fixed route service if current trends continue. So that's very positive to see. All right, were there any questions on the ridership analysis?
Your quarterly report, to some of it seems like you're seeing similar performance on the routes as we've seen.
Yeah, there's no real new patterns in terms of, those per unit metrics that we look at on the right side of the chart.
Yeah, and then as far as the changes that were made, it's all been positive.
It has mostly been positive so far. There were a few changes made that we are actually walking back in May, and I'll get to those in the next presentation. But the 77 and 78 We had reduced the frequency on that. We thought we had runtime to do that and save an operator position. And it turned out, when we put the service out on the street, we just couldn't hit those time points reliably. So we're walking that back and replacing the 40-minute service that was on those 2 routes before.
Okay, good.
So,
Well, I asked.
I wasn't hiding, but I was going to get to it for the next one.
Andre said he's not gonna be.
Okay, so starting off with an update on the downtown transfer station construction. We're still slated for opening May 21st. The project doesn't have to be complete until I believe it's June 18th is the 300-day deadline for notice to proceed that the contractor has. But it looks like we'll be able to have enough substantial progress made and so much of our infrastructure is already in place, we will be able to start operations there May 21st. There is a paving issue that we are working on addressing with the contractor. There's some water ponding that we found and some seams that aren't quite right. So we're making sure that that work will be redone and brought up to VDOT standards. And then we're also working currently on developing an operator and safety training plan. There've been a few trips out to the site to reconnoiter and see it in person. We've been developing some diagrams like the one you see on the right to help operators understand how to circulate to each individual bay. And then a few weeks prior to opening, we'll be able to start getting operators out there into the street to train and do it in person in the field. So those are the things we're working on with the downtown transfer station. Are there any questions on that? Moving on to the May service changes. So as I mentioned, we're opening the downtown transfer station May 21st. That will be the date of our May booking going live. There's a lot of changes that most of them revolve around adjusting downtown circulation patterns to serve the new downtown transfer station and provide an all transit day opportunity to transfer in that off-street location. Hopefully it'll make it more efficient for our passengers. So some of those changes, I mentioned that we were making the runtime adjustments to the Route 1. That will still be 15-minute service. The Route 13 will be absorbed into the 4A and B. Route 12 is being truncated slightly to the downtown transfer station. Route 18 will be improving its frequency to 40 minutes. The weekend sorry, I should say 20. I apologize for the typo on that bullet. The one without a route number, that's the Route 20. Its weekend frequency will be changed to 60 minutes all day. Currently, there are some 30-minute peak period service on that route. We don't see high enough ridership to really justify that right now, so we're going to pull it back to 60 minutes all day. On the weekends, the Route 50 is being extended to the downtown transfer station. The 77 and 78, as I mentioned, we are improving that frequency to 45 minutes, but that's really a reversion to service that previously existed. And then the Route 78 is also being extended to serve the downtown transfer station, and Route 87 will be serving the downtown transfer station all day. And because it will be following that pattern, there won't be service on 3rd Street with that route anymore. So drilling down a little more into these. So this is kind of what the bay alignment is going to look like at the new downtown transfer station, what routes will serve what bays. We do have one bay that will be open, Bay A. We chose that one because it's the most, one of the most difficult to kind of get to when you're pulling into the transfer station. So that'll just be there for if someone gets there early and needs to lay over, that's a safe place to lay over, let passengers disembark and make their transfer. And then we've got the listing here on the left.
Which way is north on that map?
North is to the left. I mentioned that we are incorporating Route 13 into the 4A and B. So this will provide a 1-seat ride between Bolton and Church Hill. You'll no longer need to transfer at 23rd and Franklin. The Route 18, as I mentioned, that's currently got 60-minute frequency, so that'll now have 40-minute frequency on that route. And that serves Henrico Government Center from along. Route 20, I mentioned that one currently has 30-minute peak service. It's going back down to 60. That's our orbital route. Serves a little bit of everything, it feels like, coming from the VA hospital all the way to Highland Park and Brookside. The 77, that one we're reverting back to 45-minute frequency, serves U of R at the West End. 77 between Carytown and downtown, that is also changing back to 45-minute frequency, and as I mentioned, it'll be extended to the new downtown transfer station. You can see the dotted line on this map that represents the evenings and Sunday only. Currently will be the U routing and how it will serve that new downtown transfer station. Okay, were there any questions on the proposed changes that we're making for May? Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Tricia for the Title VI equity analysis on this.
All right. For Title VI analysis, this goes over all of our current metrics in our 2020 program update. So this is anything that would constitute a major change instead of it being a minor change that would trigger the service and fare equity analysis. You'll see the number 25% popping up as kind of our standard. And that's if the number of trips, service span, route path, miles served exceed or change from that 25%. The ones that don't apply with that 25% rule are just the elimination of a route or adding of a new route. So jumping into which changes we can see in the May booking. So we have change in number of trips. The column on the right highlighted in red are the above 25%. So those would be the major changes. The black is a minor change below 25%. And we'll look at each one individually as well. So we have total number of trips changed on the 18, 20, and 78 flagged as major changes, and change in total miles serviced by the 4A and 4B, and the elimination of a route, which is the 13. So total number of trips. See, we have the 18 here at 46% change, so that flags as a major change, even though it is adding service. The 25% doesn't differentiate between burden or benefit. It just triggers the analysis regardless. So we're adding a block of service there. The 20 has reduced service on Saturday, taking off that peak. And then again, there is added service on the 78. So that's triggering at 33%. The 4A and B are above the 25% threshold. As we mentioned, this is because of the absorption of the 13. So we are adding miles to those routes because of the 13 this way. We have a 1-seat ride. The frequency overlap on the 4A and B, that 60 minutes frequency on each route will overlap throughout the Churchill area, keeping it at its 30-minute headway that it currently has. So there is no loss of service with this change. So putting all of that into our TBES software, and that is transit boardings estimation and simulation tool, it calculates the burden / benefit of change to see if our threshold is more than 20 percentage points different from the system's current low-income population and minority population. So because of that, we're at 7 and 13.5, so there is no disparate impact or disproportionate burden found. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that the 4A, B, and 13 really are consolidated themselves. So there is, even though they're flagging as individual changes, as far as a net change goes, we're not seeing much there. And then the trip changes on the 18, 20, and 78. Are there any questions on this?
So when you increase the number of trips, like on the 18, does that reduce the number for the disproportionate burden, or is it treated as neutral?
So it is still factored into this, so the total income population, or total low income population, for example, just looking at the disproportionate burden growth for right now is 31, and that's a percent, so it's 31%. The benefit of change or burden of change takes into account people trips, so that is population by block group in our service area multiplied by trips. So that trip factor is calculated in there. So making changes to something that doesn't have a lot of trips won't have as much of an impact as something that does have substantially more service.
So it was technically, I guess, a benefit because you're adding more trips, but it's the same, grabbing the same group demographically and just multiplying it. So let's say I had 10 trips, now there's 15 per day.
So does that change that burden number, or is it stay the same if it's benefit?
It depends on, I guess, so it's you're doing the system, right? So overall, it's a low income population is 31. If the new one, is this your new number, is the 24? I don't know what the actual, it would depend on, I'd have to see what the number was before for that particular route. So let's say there's 24 before it's 23, it's probably benefiting it more if that's the minority population.
I guess I understand.
It's, I would say yes, because I predict by particular demographic, I would say, yes, it's benefiting.
Wasn't sure if anything else on the slide.
So you guys won't have form to vote, but unless you guys have major objections to it in your presentation report that you're gonna have, it's just gonna say that, yeah, there weren't any significant concerns in making a full recommendation to the board. That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've made it down to item 6, the FY 24 regional public transportation.
Anyone else?
You all have another presentation?
Also a little bit of a conversation. We saw this in the PowerPoint sharing years ago. I presented it to Pat on Tuesday. That this is the memo, which then would go to the board, and then would, after approval, would also go to CBTA. Still would like to take it to the finance committee, so if it's on that schedule, then it wouldn't necessarily go until June. Which could be, I guess, good things. I feel like there are some things to go over on this sheet. You and I have had this conversation before. I think we may have as well, Todd, but high level, main things you want to focus on for 24 again is just maintaining our service at minimum of what we have on the street today. We want to, of course, prioritize getting service back to pre-pandemic levels. And if we have to focus on certain ones, we have the ones that did trigger equity concerns when we did the changes, which is the both putting service back on midday as well as weekends. Our Route 5 is now at 30 minutes, and that was designed to be 15 minutes. And then the 4A and 4B, that would be looked at as far as what is the best frequency for that route. Because it did have, in terms of actual use of people on trips, it had about 1 to 3 individuals on trip when it had the 15-minute frequency. So looking at what is kind of the right fit for frequency, but something would go back on that. Currently at 60 minutes frequency all day. So the priority, we are still, as you guys have been hearing, as of like yesterday, still have 235 full-time operators. Well, lots of great stuff happening though. So we do have high hopes that will actually change. I think we're hoping that if all the stuff we have in place happens, we might be there basically this time next year. I mean, like beyond the 280. So being very optimistic about that. So if that happens, we can reinstate all the service levels as well as plan for what we're going to do. Expansion, similar to last year, we want to basically get 50% of the local match, which is 4%. So 2% of the overall capital match requirement come from CBTA. And we're looking at $500,000 for that, the total amount of 22.1 million. that we applied for with our GRTC grant application. I have also on here, just basically the world of microtransit that we looked at in the beginning. We are working very diligently through the implementation plan for it, which will lead to the implementation of the 5 zones. I mentioned attack that a lot of the jurisdictions came up to me after we proposed the 5, that they had an interest in kind of being in the next round. And then there's a lot of opportunity of similar to Route 93, of looking at other routes that may be underperforming, meaning it costs more to operate them per person than it would, like, not using 95, but just the numbers on it, where I think it was like $48 per person. Not sure if that's cheaper, it's so far away, but if we have other routes that are like that, maybe you can consider some alternatives to complement our service. We still have out there our early morning and late night Uber and kind of internal on-demand service, looking at if we only have 6 people who are out there at those times anyway, you get something we now just kind of weave into our system as a multimodal system. So we have put recommendation to fund the next phase for about $200,000 to look at the rest of the zones. And then we have previously asked for $200,000 to fund the regional public transportation plan each year, reducing the ask for the summer of $50,000 because we are doing our transit strategic plan, which is going to take the same kind of brunt of the effort. If the funding is needed, asking to contribute $2,000 towards the total if we need to enhance the funds for that particular project. The next page just shows the full list that we have come up with over the last 2 plans of all the fixed route priorities for all the jurisdictions, primarily Henrico, Richmond, Chesterfield, and have here the Goochland request as well. The potential here, so the ones we've been talking about as far as expansion, the 1A down to the Lothian Turnpike to Walmart, and then the 3B extension once Colbert comes online, the Broken Perrin extension, and then the one to Goochland, change the Route 19 end of the line. So all of that together for each ask is for the operating expenses about 29.9 million. For the capital, 500,000. The regional transportation plan, supplement for the TSP, 50,000. And then the phase 3 for microtrans is 200,000. We're estimating a total accrual based on VDOT projections and what John regularly tells me, about 33.1 million CBTA funds by end of June. And with that, we would end up with a total need of about 27.1 million. So the rest of the reserve would go into, the rest of the funds would then go into reserve as the request. And again, that's FY $23, which are we already have. So the FY '24 funds that came in, the same request as last year, put those into reserve until we come back to you guys next year to be able to allocate those funds. And so I give you the second sheet because we actually are at the point of what we say as far as operators, and I'm gonna be optimistic during this whole conversation that this is happening. That we can put some service out there, but we never talked about, well, what happens with service. And if you were to calculate all of these, like when it was TAC, I didn't even have the pulse extensions on there, which are in the next 5 to 8 years. So I went ahead and put them on the universe of projects every year. So the ones on attack, I think it was like 19 million of the ones we had prioritized just through the regional transportation plan process. So adding in another, I don't know, 11.2 million, and it was something like $40 million all in all for all of this. It's a lot of money.
This list is 40 million.
I mean,
That's
is
fine.
that what I told you, Sam? 35, okay. 38 million for all of these. And so, I mean, if these all existed at the same time, that's not enough money to get them done. And I know I talked about we would be prioritizing, and some of yours are studies that might end up being another mode of transit anyway. So those are in the out years. But right now, with the 5 million we put in reserve last year, and then the 9 million reserve this year, that we want to be able to spend those. Just the conversation for the board then is, what is the policy as we do expand, knowing that what we have now was more or less grandfathered in at a 50% rate. Is the request now for everything to be paid for with CDTA funds, knowing that we can only do so much from the list and then seek other sources like yours, demo wise. I mean, that gives us more to keep in the reserve, and John is rigorously trying to get interest, which is so that we can keep it sustainable. Some of yours on this list too, Todd, like all the ones that are 64, I mean, that's 3 years of funds that, again, that money would still be pushed out for the CBTA funds. Or do we talk about doing some sort of match like the DRPP does with the jurisdictions, the local match requirement? What would that be? Depending on what the amount would be, whether it's 10%, 20%, whatever it is. Looking at, we need to look at this. We're gonna come to the May meeting, the finance committee with this, but if depending on those different amounts, what is it, how far does that put us out with the money? So if we spend all of it on the, whatever priority list is for the first 3 years, with the projects, if we do 30%, how far can we go with CDTA dollars? So I just wanted to address that now, knowing that actually both you guys have the 2 projects that are slated for FY 24 for expansion. You might want to just take those back to your jurisdictions as well to see if there's any interest.
It's a lot to unpack. Question, and since Sam had the number for, what is this is all operating costs, correct?
That is all operating costs, correct?
So-
Raw numbers.
What's the number look like through the list if you go to FY 26, inclusive of FY 26? So back out
All the 27 stuff.
all the 27, 20 stuff, BRT, those items.
She doesn't actually, just knew that number from earlier.
I thought you just were good at math.
I have the spreadsheet though. You said, that, so basically FY.
Everything
24
through
25.
26.
Through
So the last one would be the 1879 interim.
That was the number I took to, that gives you 20.1 million.
So almost half. So the out year stuff is expensive.
It's that.
Oh, yeah, that's what it's, yeah, exactly, that north south. But I mean, we're talking about that. I think it's important to just know that number. And again, these are very, very high level planning, of course.
So there's also gonna be a capital cost associated with this, just in terms of I know you have a spare capacity in buses now, but you're gonna need more buses for this. BRT has obviously infrastructure costs that are significant. So have you started talking about that as well?
We can make it, I believe it's still FY 1, about the same time. 26 is when, once the western expansion happens, we would need to start increasing our bus amount. Because technically we have 127, but the 6 Arctics that are coming are considered expansion service. So that would put us to 163. So that lasts quite a bit. But yeah, right now, honestly, we have a 48% spare ratio. It's supposed to be 20%, but in several justifications that we've done saying it takes 2 years or so to get a bus. I don't want to give it back, and then I won't be able to get it back until I have to need it.
And isn't the advantage of BRT that there's a good chance you'll get capital funding through grants and stuff for the
Yeah, I feel like
infrastructure.
the capital, I think will be okay. You're thinking about the CDTA dollars going towards that sort of thing.
Amongst other things, I mean,
Yeah.
I would hope we would pursue state and federal grants first, and maybe the CTA regional as a match piece for.
And the way that that's set up now is I think for you guys.
Competitive. I would be just part of that.
Yeah.
Application something.
Right, but GRTC can't. The last one I was on, GRTC couldn't apply necessarily for the capital, they could go for it.
I see what you're saying.
You would have to apply for transit for us. I think that's the way it was.
Yeah, you're right. Details. I don't think that would be a problem.
Right,
I think the expectation would be that that would be a small component of a bigger grant, as opposed to CBTA, we need $40 million for transit.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a question.
But there's a lot of opportunities for use of the CBTA dollars.
Yeah, I know what everyone says, so the conversation about additional operating support from localities for expansion,
Well, yeah, I had said the same thing too.
that's a big conversation. I think it's gonna need to happen.
Yeah.
I think the membership of your board, the membership of your board is helpful in that capacity, but to be honest, I don't know where locality is on that. I think the farther we get away from the creation of the CBTA and some of the fallout from that, the better in terms of have those conversations, as if you'd had this conversation 2 years ago.
We did have this conversation.
Yeah, I think over it. So I guess we just need to be thinking how we frame those conversations.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like I said, like, it's not that we could spend the CBTA dollars on it, we just couldn't do all of it.
Right.
And that's, if that's a decision that is recommended by the board, then that's the decision that's recommended.
Yeah, but that's,
We are seeing all.
but the recommendation of the board is gonna be a reflection as much as
Right.
of where the localities
Right.
are.
But that could be,
Which is good, because as we've been saying, we're all one now, so.
Right.
I think we just have to very carefully figure out how we roll that out, how we have those conversations.
I mean, we need to continue to do what we've been doing, what Barb does with their demo grants, what DRPT did with the I-64 funds, wherever we can find additional funds to basically keep the money that we've identified for expansion in the reserves, just continue to get interest and grow it. I mean, we can do sustainability with some of that.
The internal phrase we use is spending other people's money, is always preferred. So, for example, the Route 1 expansion service, that seems like that would be a good candidate. Then Minto and Reich would be a good candidate for a grant.
Who did something like that? Yeah. Yeah, maybe I missed second one for that. Okay.
And back to your earlier email on the start time for that, I think we have some flexibility,
Okay,
so maybe that plays
I
into,
think if we do that, I would have to.
Yeah. It's easier to say, oh, it's gonna be delayed 6 months because we, grant.
Okay.
And if you need help with, like microtransit grant, more of that, we can certainly help with going through their RFP.
Okay. Yeah, they were very supportive, just some of the rural ones, they felt like they needed to be proven before we applied for a trip. Regional significant, so that they suggested the demo for the first round, but then we go back with the trip program the second time around. But I mean, we won't start executing that until we start service, basically, which is, not until September or October.
Yeah, because I'm ready to go on more zones than just that one.
I suspect we will be quickly after the rollout of the first two. So I think
Okay.
you're gonna, more demand than,
We're ready now.
yeah.
She's trying to get ahead of you already.
That's how they roll.
Gotcha, yeah.
Watkins, Route 60.
John was mentioning Lego earlier,
Yeah.
or the big broke ground. That was a little far out.
It's a big pile of dirt right
Mhm.
Land of opportunity. All right, yeah, I mean, based on those, though, like if the Route 1, you already have funds for this year, so if that doesn't go into the regional transportation plan for yours, apply now for, some funding opportunities. So even if it does come online, it sounds like it would be the second half of the year, so no need to incorporate that in here now. When is Colbert coming on?
I think you were gonna ask me that. I didn't know that answer.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I'll find out.
We'll worry about that when it happens, but yeah, I just wanted to have an initial conversation because I feel like we've kind of been walking around it a little bit, and not needing to have it because we haven't been planning on expanding, but I think we're getting close. So I want the jurisdictions to start talking, see what they want to support.
Yeah, the problem with Route 60, that demo green is just one.
Yeah, but the other one was supposed to be 1 year, or was that 2 years?
It started out as 2 years and we stretched it even further than that. But this one, they've been very firm about it being 1 year.
So, there's money there, but they won't take that.
So speaking of money, the express to shore pump that's on here, you say there may be an opportunity to re-scope that.
We asked the GRTC, we asked Avery and Tiffany, that's who, and they said that they didn't know the answer, but they were gonna find out, because they understood if we could rescope it.
I mean, keeping in mind that that was awarded back pre-COVID, right? So say you went from 4 express services to 1, which admittedly is doing well again, but
Yeah,
we really have the demand for another one in that end of the county.
no. What crosses up there? That's 295, what is that?
3.5.
That part, that didn't get from.
No, over by, Broken Param, that's 95. Trying to think of what 64 crosses somewhere else where they let us use those funds for something else, but that's not near 64 at all.
The other 64 broad is out of Apollo, which is tends to be on the extension for the poles. Inside.
Yeah, we have the 19 extension. The dollars for that could probably use for that one too. So the flexibility on the western portion, well, I mean, we'll figure out, because I mean, as far as the way it was scoped, it was like line. It didn't really have too many details to it, they just took it from the TDP.
Nor did they ask us. It's a priority.
It could be on their way. Yes, that's true, they did not.
Appreciate the
The thought, and a lot of money.
Yeah.
So. All right,
All right, so that, is that it for the regional public transportation?
that's it, so in total, yeah, we're 27.1 million to fund and 9.4 million to go in reserve. Okay, I feel like that's not right.
So this will be on the consent at the full meeting?
Yeah,
So I guess I'm okay with that, but this is a lot of good information.
This is presentation going to the board.
Oh, okay,
this-
so not consent.
well, it's gonna go to finance committee, so then the ones who wouldn't have seen it is if they're on the operations. Well, there's a lot of overlap,
Yeah.
there shouldn't be.
It was like 2 things, so.
Yeah.
If people come.
I guess, Ms. Robertson wouldn't have seen it, and then I guess Dave Anderson.
Nelson.
It's on Monday.
Is he on finance? Okay. Well, then we're good if you're
Okay.
not speaking for the other jurisdiction.
Mr. Eagle's on, right? Yeah, they're okay. And yeah, that would be consent.
And if everybody doesn't show up at that and they say we want this to go.
We will absolutely, yeah, I know, the same presentation. Okay.
I think we can work until we get the presentation before the vote.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you.
Just do it in action.
Okay. All right, item 7, other business. I have no other business. I'm good. All right,
Next meeting is gonna be June 8th,
June 8th.
1:30. I'll send that calendar invite out. I'll let you guys have the issue.
Okay.
No, please do that.
Sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's great. So we're adjourned.